Alright, this is going to be the first video where we start the setup for our wall weapons. And I'm sure if you play Nazi Zombies, you're familiar with the wall weapons. There's just a outline on the wall of the firearm. You walk up to it. If you have enough points, you can purchase it, and you now have it. So that's what we're going to get started on today. Well, right now. Now, as always, in the description, there's a link to download. So if you're going to download a compressed file, extract it, you're going to have this folder called Wall Weapons. And it's going to contain a mesh and two outlines, one for the STG and one for the M1 carbine. So we're going to go ahead and import those. So I'm going to go here to Weapons. Under, let's just do the material in here. We're going to right click, create a master material. So we're going to right click, create material. Let's name it M underscore weapon outline master. And let's open it up. And we will also drag in, I'm being blind, our textures and mesh here. So I'm going to actually right click, create a new folder and call it wall weapons and drag that kind of stuff into there. So inside of STG 44, what I'm going to do, I'm going to drag the STG outline into it. And I'm going to do the same thing for the M1 carbine. Drag the M1 carbine outline into that. And then back inside of wall weapons, I want to drag the wall weapon plane mesh in like so. And I want to make sure it said do not create material and import. So now let's set up the material. So we're going to open that up, which apparently I already did. We're just going to use the STG for now. So we're going to open up, drag the STG outline into it. Then we're going to right click on our texture and click convert to parameter. I'm just going to call this one weapon outline. Now we're going to click on our materials here. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the blend mode from opaque to translucent. Then we're going to plug the RGB into base color, and then the alpha into the opacity, and hit save. So once this is done, it should kind of give us an example of what it's going to look like. Here it is. It's kind of hard to tell considering it's on a sphere, but we'll set it up to use that on our plane here in a second. So now let's open up our plane, and let's search for weapon outline master. And here you can see the outline of our gun. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And I want to create a material instance off of this. So we're going to right click on our material, create material instance. And I'm just going to name it mi underscore weapon outline. This one's going to be for the STG, so STG 44. I'm going to move it to our STG 44 folder, like so. Then I'm going to copy it, do the same thing in our M1 carbine, and rename it to M1 carbine. Then open that up, check the weapon outline. We're going to change this one to our M1 carbine texture. So I meant to actually rename these. So I'm going to rename it to M1 carbine outline. I'm going to do the same thing for STG, which I already did. So let me just rename these real quick. Okay. So now we have it for our M1 carbine as well. So now if we head back over to our wall weapons and we drag out the plane, we can kind of see the effect that it has. So there's our STG, and here's our M1 carbine. So we can easily switch between whichever ones we want. So I'm going to go ahead and actually delete the plane, but go ahead and save all. So everything's good to go. And we're going to start on our class. So we're going to go C++ classes, public, Nazi zombie, usables, and we have our interactable base. Now let's look at that. So open up our interactable base, CPP and .h, well, because we only really need the .h, and we can look at kind of everything we have. So we have our barricade derived off of this, and it displays a UI message. It has an object name, which isn't really that important for us because we're mostly going to be focused on the UI message in this case. And we have our function called use. So the use function is ready for us to override and do whatever we want with. And that's where we're going to be adding the weapon to our player's hands, well, giving the weapon to our player and that kind of stuff. So we're going to derive our wall weapon class off of this interactable base. So right click on interactable base, create C++ class derived from it, and let's give it a name. I'm just going to call this one wall weapon. That'll work. And I guess I'm just going to leave it in here under usables. Or actually, let's put this inside of our weapons folder right here and hit create class. All right, now I can go ahead and reload. I'm just going to open everything up. And fix the include. It's going to be usables weapons / wall weapon.h. Let's create our constructor. And let's look at some things. So object name and UI message. I'm going to paste these in. Honestly, there's probably not much of a point because that's going to be the same from interactable base anyways, so we really don't need to worry about that, especially considering we're going to be having a bunch of blueprint classes off of this. So now we need to think of the actual data. So I'm going to make a protected section. It's going to be view property, edit, defaults only, and I have the category here. And now this is going to be our weapons class. So we're going to do T sub class of class A weapon base. Call it weapon class. Now we want to add a static mesh. So I'm actually going to do that above here. So same thing again, but we're going to for declare use static mesh component and give it a name of, let's just call it simply wall weapon mesh, I guess. I couldn't think of a name. My brain kind of went dead. So now we're going to set it. So wall weapon mesh equals create default sub object, use static mesh component, static mesh component. Now let's include that. So include components static mesh component.h. So now we have our weapons mesh and we're going to set that to the root. Have we done that in here? No, we have not. Okay. So we're going to set wall weapon mesh to equal our root component. All right, I goofed. Root component to equal our wall weapon mesh. And we want to override the use function. So we're going to make a public section. And override our use. I'm going to go ahead and close down the editor. So I'm going to go ahead and print out a log. Actually, better yet, let's as a test, we're gonna do if, let's include our weapon class, include world at war, public, Nazi zombie, usables, weapons, no, usables, weapon base.h. We're gonna do if a weapon base, weapon equals get world spawn actor, a weapon base from the class, so weapon class. Now let's create some parameters real quick. So this can take it into the parameter. If we hit the comma, we have f actor spawn parameters, f actor spawn parameters, spawn params. Let's put spawn params as the second parameter and change some stuff. So we're going to set the owner to equal player. But I also want to go ahead and do if player to indicate that everything's valid, like so. Now what's the issue here? Right, so I guess let's just cast you. So cast a actor from player, just to make that happy. Alrighty, so I'm just gonna print a log. Bond weapon, and I'm going to print out, or not print out, weapon set actor location equal to player get actor location. Okay, I gotta include a Nazi zombie character then. So include world.net war public player, dang it, player. We're gonna do Nazi zombie character.h. Does that mean I can go ahead and reset this? Yes, I can. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and compile. And with any luck, this should spawn the weapon. Do I want to have things like cost in here? I thought I did. We're going to set up cost, so let's look in our barricade. So we just have this simple uint8 for cost, as well as a boolean for being used. And I kind of want to follow along with this a similar method that the oh, what do you call it? That World at War actually did. And when after the weapon was initially purchased, the weapons mesh actually spawned and appeared where the outline was. So that way it was kind of, you could see exactly which weapon it is, even though it says it, but it's just a nice little effect. But that'll be something to do in the future as well. All right, once it finally decides to load up, there we go. So wall weapon, I'm going to right click, create a blueprint class, go down to weapons, wall weapons. We're just going to place it in there. So BP underscore wall weapon. So we're going to set the mesh to be our wall weapon plane, like so. And from here, we can set the material. So this is for the STG. So we're going to set the weapon class to be the STG. So press F to buy STG44. Pile save. And let's drag it out. So I'm going to go forward by 1 centimeter. Save all. And just see what happens. Press F to buy STG44. I press F. It says it spawned the weapon. So let's look for it. So that's RSTG here underneath. I just realized because the weapon is by default hidden. But either way, it's actually right here, even though it's, hidden. So hidden in game, we're gonna uncheck, and here's the weapon. So it actually went through and it spawned the weapon whenever we pressed F on it. That's what we want. So that's all we're gonna do for this video right now. Let me just adjust the height a little bit. That's better. I can just save. So we now have the base kind of for our wall weapon. I'm actually gonna, let's see, only 15 minutes. Now we're gonna go ahead and quickly add a cost, similar to how we did in our barricade. So we're gonna have mutate cost, paste that in our wall weapon, as well as I want to have the B as used, and that's replicated. I want to paste that right below it. I'm gonna open up our barricade.cpp and copy the replication right here. Change the class to a wall weapon. We need to include the Unreal Network. So net/Unreal Network, and we are good to go here. So when we hit use, we're going to do pretty much just a simple check. So if role, or actually if get world is server, because the server is going to have authority over our wall weapons. And I also want to do and player to confirm that that's valid. So now we're checking for the server, and if the player is valid, if it is, we're going to keep going and do pretty much whatever else we need to do. So if we are not the server, what we will want to do is we need to kind of think. So my idea here is we can either, set ourselves as the owner, or we can go a different route and just have a kind of like a dedicated RPC on our character. So if we look at our barricade, call use, check if we have authority. So we're going that route. Let's look at our Nazi zombie character. Go to our interact. If interactable, if we have authority, we call use. If we do not have authority, we call server interact. And server interact will go through and use it for us. So it's going to be using on the server. So we're going to be calling use on the server. So this should be good to go. So I'm going to just actually change this back to as authority to follow along with our barricade. And this should all run. So what I'm going to do here is in our Nazi our character base, I'm going to comment out the lines where we add the 2 extra weapons, like so. Just minimize them. So that way the only thing we're doing is we are simply spawning the 1911 and just simply adding it to our array. So now in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to actually add it to our character. So we have only the pistol in our hand. Now the only thing we need to do before this video ends is just set the default price. So in our barricade.cpp, we just have these two. BSU equals false. We're just going to do the same thing, but we're going to follow along. So cost, and I'm going to give the default cost of, I don't know, 1200, I guess. And I'm going to compile. So I'm going to go ahead and save all this, close it down. But regardless, we should pretty much be set up. So assuming this compiles, I'm going to end the video here, And in the next one, okay, project failed, direct lifetime. I disagree. Let's see. Interactable base, is it set to replicate? No, it's not. That, no, wait, no, that shouldn't cause it to not compile. All right, what am I missing? All right, so we're including that real network. Make sure I'm not doing anything kind of stupid. So, oh, duh, I don't have the onRep function. I'm stupid. So what we're going to do is create a U function. So we're just going to call it void onRep underscore weapon purchased. And change onRep barricade used to onRep weapon purchased. Create the implementation. And we're just going to leave it and recompile. So pretty much what we're going to do when the weapon is purchased. So this onRep is going to fire. Actually, we don't really need the onRep. So what we're going to be doing instead is on the server, we're going to spawn the weapon. And it's pretty much going to be in place of the outlines. So the weapon's just going to be kind of chilling there, if that makes sense. Okay, so we're good and we're compiling. So sorry for kind of being scattered here towards the end. So what we're going to end up doing in the next video is we're going to actually be setting this up to work in our hands. So whenever we use the weapon, it's going to get added to our hands, which will allow us to simply switch to it, which that should honestly be very simple to do with how we have this set up currently. So as usual, if you want to help support me, support the channel, and keep me going, my Patreon is linked in the description. And if you have any questions or anything like that, my Discord server is also linked in the description. So, as always, I will see you in the next one.